And, sometimes I think, where do you learn to say taxi? More to come. Hi, everybody, and welcome into this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I thank you guys so much. And I also thank you guys, those of you who were able to tune in earlier on the segment. I really appreciate it. And before we get started, we're going to do our usual house orders, and we will start out with a word of thanks to our sponsors and, of course, the viewers like you. This show is brought to you in part by our sponsors. Whether you're interested in health, culture, politics, scripture, automobiles, or music, please check out Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Marcy T., Joseph Francis Burton, Paralysis by Analysis, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, Anthony Scioli, and Let the Truth Be Told. We'll be right back right after this. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And for those of you who tuned in earlier on that 11th hour live stream, thank you guys so much for coming in. And we're going to get started here in just a second. And I want to say hello to Jermaine G and Nick Smith. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And yes, we are going to start off with, I gave you guys a bit of a graphic today that says say taxi. And I also gave you a graphic which indicates some level of standardized testing there with your all-time classic number 2 pencil. And it says lowering standards. So we're going to look at both of those, and we'll also take a look at what I called earlier the rhino list on the infrastructure bill. So what we're going to do is we'll start off first with it looks like we talked about this a little bit earlier about maybe there being a little bit of a, dare I say, the pendulum swing, maybe we can call it the people's pendulum. How about the people's pendulum is starting to swing? I mean, maybe that's some hope. There's hope in the people's pendulum, so we'll take a look at that first. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming in, and I really appreciate it. So we're going to go on over to a liner that talks about it gives you the full story on my reference here. So we're going to share the screen here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. So we have a Missouri taxi company that's refusing mocktails, or should I say the muzzled customers. So thank you guys so much for tuning in on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn, and I will be giving you the full scale on this. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, so this comes from thehill.com, and let's see, I apologize for the thick intros there, the imagery and the videos there. However, according to this, the owner of a Missouri taxi company said his transportation service will not pick up passengers who wear the shields or have received the CV-19 mocktail, despite a surge of the CASESs in the state. Quote, "We don't allow any type of shields in our vehicles. The second one, we're very against the mocktails, and we do not wish to have people in our vehicle that did the mocktails. And quote, owner Charlie Bullington told KMOV in an interview that was published on Thursday. According to the taxi services website, Yo Transportation operates in Franklin, Jefferson, Lincoln, Montgomery, St. Charles, St. Louis, and Warren counties. KMOV reported that the business has operated for 16 years. Quote, I understand Missouri is one of the top 3 states with the lowest mock donation rate. So he says, I'm proud of all the Missouri people for standing against this, end quote. The Bullington told the KMOV in the interview. According to the Becker's Hospital Review, as of Friday, Missouri ranked 39th among states based on the percentage of population fully mocktailed. According to data from the Johns Hopkins University, about 42% of the state's population is fully mocktailed. In a brief interview with The Hill, Bullington said both policies were quote safety protocols and were not discriminatory. He said he took issue with the face shields because he couldn't see customers' faces. He also claimed he knew people who had been adversely affected by the CD mocktail. According to this, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has noted on its website that adverse events after receiving the mocktail are rare. Let's get that little verb in there, emphasizing that the mocktails are safe and effective. Customers on Yelp and Google have complained about anti-masking messaging they received from the company. The Riverfront Times reported one reviewer who said they were denied a ride said the driver texted them multiple times afterward. Quote, this man spent 2 hours harassing me via text about his anti-mask nonsense. I had to ask him 3 times to leave me alone, end quote, the reviewer said. The Riverfront Times reported Missouri is fighting a wave of the new CV-19 cases. The state saw 33,257 new cases on Thursday, compared with hundreds in late May and June. So there, see, this is what I'm talking about, the people's pendulum. I think I talked about once that there was a restaurant out in Huntington Beach. There was a Huntington Beach restaurant that was basically doing the same kinds of things for my overlords who are tuning into this. So, you've got, they're looking for, the unmocktailed, So that's, I mean, and then actually, I think I saw imagery where the line was swinging around the door at the Huntington Beach restaurant. It's a Basilico Pasta. And, you guys can get the address on 21501 Brookhurst Street on Huntington Beach, Surf City. If you're going that way, and they actually have their own, directives on the door. So you'll see. So I don't know. What do you call that? Is it, it's a people's pendulum, right? Is that what that is, or the business pendulum? I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I really appreciate it. I just want to say hello again to everybody in the stream. That if you are just now joining us, I really appreciate it. Anarchy Television comes in. He says, I love it that businesses are saying no and banning this gimmick. I'm mincing my words. You guys know what I'm on about. So let's see. Jermaine G says, I agree. Plus, it's easy for such customers to ride. You see, that's what I'm saying. We've got everything that seems to serve the dark, like we've politicians for criminal constituents, we've got, who knows? John H. Roberts is here, says, if you are sophisticated, then you are immune to this immunity. Interesting. Yeah, there you go. It's a class. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about this, but what are we revving? What are we getting up to? What is being revealed here? It's either you're with them or you're down here with us. I'm a peasant too. So just if you didn't know, Lynn Pila, how are you? Thank you so much for coming in. Lynn Pila says, good morning from Singapore. Good morning to you. Good. Let me just say this, and I think TDOA does great job with this. Shout out to TDOA, wherever you are. He always says, and I think it's a good note to self. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, citizens of social media. In this case, it would be YouTube or Twitch. So good evening, good afternoon on the social media platforms, and especially YouTube here on our main station here. So yes, thank you guys so much for tuning in. So with that said, I want to take you to something else that I was kind of alluding to earlier. So it's just total bizarro land. We've talked about standards. I talked about earlier how standards were being lowered for teachers as well as students. Okay, so historically, we've been taught, or at least our history books, as well as Hollywood and all these people with their perspectives, and these professors have told us that, and we do have chronicles, that we do have some journals that actually support the idea. There was a time in which, of course, slaves and descendants of slaves was forbidden for a slave to learn to read. Okay. And then education, to attend school or to receive any form of education. So that brings me to the irony of the next headline. We always start out with quite a bit of headlines here. So this is going to speak to that. We have another tyrant who is, changing the standards. And of course, she says she's just doing it for us little old darkies. She's just doing what's best. She's got to tell you that she's got to remind you of where you rank in the scheme of things. So I'm going to take you to that clip, and thank you guys so much for coming in. I'm going to read a comment here from Jermaine G. Says, we of the fight back no matter how the deck is stacked against us. I hear you, Jermaine G. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to take you over to that liner, and thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I'm going to go ahead and share that screen with you. So I'm going to talk to you, show you what it's not progressive. This is not progressive. This is worse than regressive. And don't tell me that you're doing something, for the benefit of somebody because of their skin color. Don't give me that. It's like we're getting beyond. It's beyond. It's not fun and games anymore. The memes, if you're savvy with making memes, it's just time out. Don't make any more. This is much more serious than that. You got to stop. You got to take a much more serious approach at this point. So we have an Oregon governor who signs a new law allowing students to graduate without proving whether they, without proving whether or not they can, read, write, or do math. You see what I mean? So this is, according to this is from the post-millennial, okay? The post-millennial. I'm going to go ahead and blow this up for you. See, this is what I'm talking about, the left coast. Yeah, you can see it's just a hot mess, okay? An Oregon high school diploma does not guarantee that students who earned it can read, write, or do math at a high school level. Well, let's just for a second here. Let's just, for argument's sake, yeah, well, you could say that. You could say that. But you could, to be even on a smaller scale, you could say that to what extent can they read? Like, what are there are different reading levels. That's the thing. It's like it was never possible. It wasn't possible. I don't want to say never. It's not possible that all students read or write or do mathematics on the same level, nor is it that they process or that they even learn, that they even understand those concepts that get them to that understanding in the same way. So there's this, so it's more than to talk about the subjectivity of our standards, period. We know it's subjective, because when people talk about standards, we don't have, the last time I checked, we don't have a US curriculum for reading, writing, math. We don't. Every single state does something different, just like the colleges. Everybody has a different standard. Well, to me, that's an oxymoron in itself. If it's a standard, then that means that most people should be adhering. It's compulsory, right? That's what everybody is required to do on some state level, whether it's federal or whether it's, state to state. But there's the subjectivity here is horrible, but it also gives students not the premise here. This is a talking point is all this is to me. And it's going to dumb people down. Not only is it going to dumb people down, it gives kids excuses not to try. Just because something gets a little tough doesn't mean that you just bail the hell out. Or you just start saying, hey, life is not fair. I don't know where it came up, who told these kids that life was going to be fair. Every single aspect of life is going to be fair. And that you're going to have the exact same thing that somebody else has. You can grow up in the same household and the kids turn out differently. Well, what laws do they have for that, ladies and gentlemen? Is that an equity problem? So let me just keep going here. I'm on. Hi, Old School Wolf Media. Thank you so much for coming in. So let's just go in here. All right. So here we go. ThePostMillennial.com. An Oregon high school diploma does not guarantee that students who earned it can read, write, or do math at a high school level. This sounds like it should be like a writing prompt. I'm sorry. I'm not organizing my thoughts very well to get it started, but I think it's very subjective, and I think it's just destructive, and it's just nothing means nothing, right? That's nothing means nothing. That's the Marxist part of this. Okay, so Governor Kate Brown dropped the requirement that students demonstrate they have achieved those essential skills by signing Senate Bill 744 into law. She declined again Friday to comment on why she supported suspending the proficiency requirements, reported Oregon Live. The bill was not entered into the legislative database until July 29th, a departure from the standard practice of updating the public database the same day the bill is signed. Charles Boyle, the governor's deputy communications director, said the governor's staff told legislative staff the same day the governor signed the bill. Boyle said in an email statement that suspending the reading, writing, and math proficiency requirements will benefit, quote, wait for it, Oregon's Black, by government demand, Latino, Latina, Latinx, whatever that means, Indigenous, Asian, Pacific Islander, tribal, and students of color, end quote. If that means anything to you. He added, quote, leaders from those communities have advocated time and again for equitable graduation standards along with expanded learning opportunities and support, end quote. Lawmakers did not pass any significant expansion of learning opportunities or support for Black, Indigenous, and students of color during the 2021 legislative session. The Democrats in the legislature overwhelmingly supported ending the long-time proficiency requirement, while Republicans criticized it for lowering academic standards. A couple of lawmakers crossed party lines on the votes. I'd like to see that. Let me put that in my hat. We'll see what the record looks like on that. I don't know if I could see it. Proponents said the state needed to pause Oregon's high school graduation requirements since 2009, but suspended during the pandemic until the class of 2024 graduates for leaders to re-examine its graduation requirements. Recommendations for new standards are due by September 2022. Oregon's education officials have long insisted they would not impose new graduation requirements on students who have already begun high school. New requirements would not take effect until the class of 2027. That means at least 5 more classes could graduate without demonstrating proficiency in math and reading. That's could, operative there. Word. Much of the criticism of the graduation requirements was targeted at standardized tests. Oregon, unlike many other states, did not require students to pass a particular standardized test or any test at all. Students could demonstrate their ability via 5 different tests or complete an in-depth classroom project judged by their own teachers. No notification went went out regarding the governor's signing of the graduation bill. Okay, so you guys, I'm sure you can see, many issues with that argument. Like I said, it's still subjectivity, even with that method of with the school, with your own teacher judging a class project, judging a classroom project. I mean, that's subjective too, right? Yeah. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is not progressive. It is not. And I don't know, but see, to me, I think here again, this is manipulation, because they talk about that people have advocated for standards to be, for equity and these kinds of things. Well, exactly. But see, even that, they're not even specific on that. Who's advocating, and what kinds of things are they referring to? Like, what's your method of making these arguments? Where did you collect the data that says that people are looking for other ways to enhance education? You're not going to do it by not making them prove that they can actually read something. I mean, what exactly are you doing? So can you imagine, like, so by 2027, you're going to have a 5-year wave of students that are going to be less literate. I talk about that word all the time, functional illiterates. And you could be functionally illiterate. You can be functionally illiterate. And that means you could read the first statement in something and not read the rest of it. But you could still, you might function with it, but you may not have an entire, your whole perspective might be a little bit off, because whether it's a research paper or something, whether it's casual or exploratory, if you're not doing it to the full extent, you're going to have less of a less perspective. You're going to have less to write. Your knowledge base will be lower, just because you haven't done as much as you should do. I think reading is something that has to be, it's basically something that you, not only that you practice, but it's also, something that you expose yourself to other people reading and other writings, forms of reading. It's a comprehensive skill. It's not something that you can just do. You can recognize words, but you may not be able to read them in context and comprehend anything. You may not. So for them to, I don't even know at what point. So what are they going to say next? That the kids that have a, they're Black or Latino, or are they going to say you don't go to school at all? I mean, that's subjective. Where does it stop? Where does it start? At what point do they say, oh, well, you guys should just quit school in the 5th grade. Just quit in the 8th grade. That way you don't have to deal with any graduation components. You don't have to prove that you can read or write. So in that point, so why are you going to school at all? If you don't have to, if you're not going to be held accountable, if there's no accountability for the student, then what's anybody doing in a school? Do you guys understand? There's one thing is teacher accountability, but then there's also student accountability. I think a lot of times, sometimes we shift it, and I think the European model, I think, puts more accountability on the actual students. But here, I think in the States, we do a little bit more on the teacher. I don't think we do as much, but I think it's an exchange. It should be 50-50. Actually, I think it should be, even the parents should be much more involved with education. I've seen, what that looks like. When the parents are involved, then there's accountability there. They're communicating with the student, they're communicating with the teacher, and it's not just secondhand, accounts. They know what's going on. They know what the assignment is, because they're able to look in, they're able to come in at any time or drop in any time. But we're not doing that. We're doing surveillance everywhere else right about now. We're not doing that in our classrooms. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Jermaine G's here. Let me read. Hello, Joseph Francis Burton. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I just want to say hello to you. Joseph Francis Burton says Latino, Latina, and Latinx. I just And I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. I don't have to make it up. Somebody already wrote the script. And then there's a question for me. It says, why are standardized tests considered racist? Help me understand educators' rationale. Well, you know what? You just have to go to your local university and, they'll talk, I think there's a lot of subjectivity there. And I don't agree with that premise. Of course, I don't. Do I think that all students, are they exposed to the same things? No, they're not. But there again, there's that subjectivity. I talk about, we don't have you have a California curriculum, a state curriculum, or state curriculum standards for math, standards for reading, standards for English. You have that, but that's specific for California. But then when you have Georgia, they have their own standards. But then when you sit down to something like, this is just an example, like you sit down to something like an ACT or an SAT, then all of a sudden, to me, those standards, they might not match up because everybody's been doing something a little bit differently, or their pace might be a little bit different, which to me could either be more advanced or the students haven't learned as much by the time their students reach that grade level. Or, there used to be rankings, I think, in terms of education for all 50 states. And to me, that tells you right away that we don't have a streamlined curriculum nationwide. We don't. Everybody's doing something differently. Some people are behind. Some states are more behind than others. I will say that. But the rationale for the racist, standardized test, you'll take that up with your local professor or the guy with the ponytail and the Hawaiian shirt. Do that. I can't help you with that. Go to the Africana Studies Department. They might have something for you. They might. Jermaine G says, racists will always try to belittle us people of color. Well, there again, I see that, a little differently. I don't know that. To me, you can't control people. And if somebody is discriminating against somebody, or if they have prejudice, then they're gonna pick what they want. They're gonna pick the basis for that. And can you control that? What law controls the hearts and minds of men? What? I mean, what can you do about, what can you do about the way people think? Or you can't control that. If somebody wants to discriminate against you, they're going to do it, and they're going to be as creative as they can be. But I don't think that, I don't subscribe to that a person is going to be, just that they're going to have marginal success, or the whole world. I cannot speak for the whole world. I cannot. Just like I don't want people speaking for me, or people that might look like me or have characteristics like me. I don't want people doing that to me. So I don't do that to other people, no matter how bad it is. That's just not a place I'll go. I'm not going to go there with it because I can't prove. I think that's to me, that's more along the lines of a conspiracy, because I can't prove it. It's circumstantial. It could be, I just can't. I can't go there. People have to prove things to me, and it's a considerable amount of proof. So I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn, because I find that I think people don't realize, like, I don't have an inferiority complex. I don't. And I can't let somebody, there was a quote that I heard the other day that, maybe it was Elder, that was saying that no one can make you, it was Larry Elder, he was saying, I paraphrase, go look it up. He says that nobody can make you feel inferior without you giving them permission. That's just the way at this point at life, that's the way I look at those kinds of things. That's just it. If you give anybody power to do something, what do you think they're going to do? And I'm saying, if you let people get the best of you, if you internalize something that they may or may not be thinking about, who is the actual loser? Who's the biggest loser in that kind with that kind of self-talk? And I don't do that kind of self-talk, and I wouldn't want anybody else to do it. So I appreciate you guys so much for coming in. So what I'm going to do, we have a grand reveal here. We're going to reveal the 19 senators. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for the reveal on the rhinos? Okay, so I'm going to take you to that screen right now, and that's going to come from our friends over at Breitbart. Alrighty. So what do we have here? Okay, so it looks like we have 19 Senate Republicans made, quote, history for Joe Biden by passing the bipartisan so-called infrastructure bill. Okay, we're talking deficit spending, folks. They repackage it, but the money's still not there. How about that? Okay, according to this, the Senate passed the H.R. 3684, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act 69-30, which featured overwhelming Democrat support and strong Republican support. Okay, this is coming from Breitbart.com. 19 Senate Republicans voted for the infrastructure bill. The Senate Republicans that voted with the Democrats for the legislation reportedly include, are you ready? Are you sitting down? All right, I'm gonna give you guys a full scale on this one. I just have to make light of these things. All right, you're ready. Good. All right, so according to this, number one, Dan Sullivan, Republican of Arkansas. 2, Shelley Moore Capito, Republican of West Virginia. Number 3, Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho. Roy Blunt, Republican of, I guess it's Missouri, or maybe it's Missouri or Montana. Richard Burr, Republican of North Carolina. Deb Fisher, Republican of Nevada or Nebraska. I'm getting not Nevada. Oh boy, I'm a mess. Lindsey Graham is the Republican of South Carolina. Rob Portman, Republican of Ohio. Tom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina. Lisa Murkowski, she's on the list pretty regularly, right? Republican of Alaska. And Jim Risch is a Republican of Idaho. And I got that one. Dan Sullivan is another one from Alaska. Chuck Grassley is Republican of Iowa. Bill Cassidy's Republican of Louisiana. Kevin Cramer, Republican of North Dakota. Roger Wicker, Republican of Mississippi. Mitch McConnell, ding, ding, ding. Where have you guys heard that before? Republican of Kentucky. John Hoeven, a Republican of North Dakota. Susan Collins, that's another one that's on the docket all the time. Republican of Maine. And guess who this last one is? Mitt Romney, Republican of Utah. So, I stand corrected on many of those. I can give you the capitals of every single one, all 50. But when I get ready to do these, the initials on the two state abbreviations, I'm toast. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat of New York, said on the Senate floor, this bill passed under Biden is the first major infrastructure bill in over a decade. Okay, so we're talking, Green New Deal kind of infrastructure. Okay, I'm going to be loose. Don't call infrastructure. It's, it's a part of something else. Schumer said the bipartisan bill serves as the, quote, first track, end quote, of the, quote, 2-track, end quote, strategy on infrastructure. So you got part 1, part 2, probably part 3, part 4. When does it end? Vice President Kamala Harris presided over the Senate as the chamber passed the bill. Senator Rob Portman, who is retiring soon, said the Senate made history by passing the bill through the Senate. Oh, they're concerned about history now. Imagine that. Okay, so this is Portman, a lead BIF negotiator, says the Senate's about to make history ahead of a vote on final passage. Quote, there's a joke around town that infrastructure week has come and gone so many times that people are a little cynical when we talk about it. Well, today is infrastructure day. Senator Mike Braun said before the vote that Republicans are, quote, complicit by supporting the bipartisan bill as it would lead to the passage of the Democrats' $3.5 trillion package. Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican who voted against the bill, said, quote, I just voted no on the first installment of Joe Biden's massive left-wing agenda. No to gender identity mandates. No to the Green New Deal. No to CRT, quote, racial equity, and quote, mandates. No to disseminating the energy sector. Yes to America. All right. So Senator Tommy Tuberville, Republican of Alabama, who voted against the bill, said in a statement after the vote, the final legislation is loaded with giveaways to big cities and pet projects that have little to do with real infrastructure. Worse, we're using fuzzy math and IOUs to hide the real cost of this massive legislation. I can't vote for the bill that fails to give Alabama a fair slice of the pie, while also saddling Alabama taxpayers with even more debt. The $1.2 trillion, 2,702 page bipartisan infrastructure bill serves as the first part of a two-part approach for the Biden administration. The Biden administration hopes the bill would facilitate funding of physical infrastructure, while the Democrat $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill would fund social spending programs, which includes expansion of the Affordable Care Act to address the, quote, Medicaid gap, and quote, amnesty for illegal aliens, and a civilian climate corps. You see the expansion, you see the swell here. While Senators Portman and Bill Cassidy, two GOP lead negotiators of the bipartisan bill, have insisted there is no link between the two infrastructure bills, the passage of the bipartisan bill appears to put the reconciliation bill on a glide path towards passing through Congress. The passage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill also serves as a significant victory for the Senate Republicans that also voted to impeach the former President Donald Trump this year. This includes, here you go, Richard Burr, Bill Cassidy, Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, and Susan Collins. I told you, you heard those names before. The Senate budget resolution, which serves as a legislative vehicle for the $3.5 trillion reconciliation infrastructure bill, contains instructions for House budget committees John Yarmuth to make changes to the bipartisan bill as he sees fit, Breitbart News reported. The Congressional Budget Office found that the bill would add a $256 billion to the deficit, and the Penn-Wart budget model said the bill would add no, quote, significant level of economic growth. As Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senate Republicans appeared ready to rush the bill through the Senate to start the budget approval process and move on to their August reset, Senator Bill Hagerty stood against the Senate's rushed process. Hagerty said that the bill should have time to consider the drastic implications of the several thousand-page bill and open the legislation up for amendments, as the bill was drafted in secret by a bipartisan group of lawmakers and outside the normal committee drafting process. Hagerty refused to consent to the Senate's advancement of the bill, explaining that the Senate should debate the bill as, quote, the world's greatest deliberative body, end quote. He said in a statement Monday night, the American public deserves to have the Senate, the world's greatest deliberative body, actually deliberate. Because of my refusal to expedite passage of this bill, we did that and allowed taxpayers to see that this infrastructure package is the first step in the Democrats' quadruple bank shot attempt to usher in a radical vision for America, burdening our children and grandchildren with more debt and making American citizens dependent on the government for virtually everything. While I recognize I delayed the August recess, the stakes are too high here, and we have successfully begun to expose the true and dangerous intentions of my Democrat colleagues. Because of Hagerty's efforts, the Senate had slowed down the bill's passage by 5 days, giving Americans a greater understanding of the $1.2 trillion bill their lawmakers voted for. The Senate fight over $30 billion cryptocurrency regulation is emblematic of why Hagerty wanted to slow down Schumer and Senate Republicans' rushing of the infrastructure bill. So this thing is kind of dense here. You can see I'm almost to the end of it, but I guess we can hear a little bit from Cruz. If not, I'm just going to put the link in the description. Not in description, but I'm just going to put the link here for you. Boy, how are you guys? I'm just going to put it here for you. All right, so there you go. You got some links there, and yeah, that's what you got. So I'll just finish that, a little bit of that, and then we will be rounding out this this segment. Let's see. So we had also the Senate Rob Portman and Biden White House proposed a $30 billion cryptocurrency regulation as a quote pay for the mammoth legislation. Regulation would impose onerous IRS reporting requirements on a cryptocurrency, including many parts of the industry, such as node operators, validators, software developers, that either should not or cannot comply with the regulation, lawmakers and industry officials say. The uproar from the cryptocurrency industry and the pro-crypto lawmakers led Senators Cynthia Lummis and Pat Toomey to impose an amendment that would address the concerns with Portman's proposal. Senator Ted Cruz even proposed an amendment that would remove Portman's regulation. Lummis and Toomey struck a compromise with Senator Kristen Sinema and Portman over the regulations. However, Senator Richard Shelby, who will retire next year, refused to allow the amendment to be considered unless they are allowed for increased defense spending in the bill. There you go. Way to go, Richard Shelby. They should be increasing the defense spending in the bill. Shelby's tactic shuttered the amendment and allowed the discussion, quote, disastrous, end quote, provision to remain in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Cruz, during the fight to allow the Lummis-Toomey amendment in the bill Monday, lambasted the Senate's ignorance of cryptocurrencies and that the Senate did not go through the traditional legislative process to consider how the proposal could cripple the industry and send American jobs overseas. So what I'm going to do, as I said earlier, I will leave this to you guys. You can go in and have a look. You can just, there's only a couple of them here. And these were posted on Twitter. Lummis, after Shelby blocked the inclusion of the cryptocurrency amendment, pledged to keep fighting to fix the language in the bill. She said, quote, we will continue to look for ways to fix the digital asset language in this bill. It might not be today, but we won't give up, end quote. The House could still insert Lummis-style amendment when the chamber considers the bill. The so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill moves to the House, where Speaker Nancy Pelosi has pledged to hold the consideration of that bill until the Senate also advances the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill. The Senate will move forward this week on the budget resolution and the multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure bill soon after. So I have put that link out in the stream for you guys if you're interested in that. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are doing well. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to open this just for a few minutes to see if you guys have any actual specific comments. I mentioned it earlier that we would discuss just a little bit. We talk about, some of these things that are inside this HR 227. Do you have anything on that? And if not, we're going to be signing off and saying salute. So I'm going to take a quick little break here on your Say Taxi. All right, I'm going to take a couple of infomercials and then we'll be back to say salute if no one has any HR 227 comments. Thank you guys so much. right, guys, thanks so much. And for our final distraction, I do have an ad for you. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And I'll be happy to share that with you. And I want to say salute in just 1 second. We're going to close out. Actually, I have one more. I forgot that I have, looks like Larry Elder has had a bit of a tip of the brim from an old school. You might remember this name. This name might ring a bell. According to, let's see, make sure you guys can see this. Okay. This is coming from Larry Elder's own account. And it looks like he says that Clint Eastwood just contacted me with a message of his support. A shout out to Mr. Eastwood. You made my day. Hashtag we've got a state to save. Hashtag recall Gavin Newsom. So that's for your distraction mode there. And then just one more. Another one in the opposing direction. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are doing well out there. And I try to tell you, don't worry about that like button. You just do, we're available. If it speaks to you, you just do it. If it doesn't, then we'll make it work. All right. And then for my last and final distractive trick, we're going to have a little bit of an ad for you from yours truly. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Here we go. Got an ad for the opposing side. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Okay. And it's entitled State on Fire. Okay. Hope you guys are doing well. And I'm going to give you the full screen on this so that you can have a great experience, a closing experience going out.
Gavin Newsom is at it again. Exaggerations and outright lies. This time with dangerous consequences. And worse, Newsom cut fire prevention funding by more than $500 million. Gavin's lies could cost California lives. Gavin Newsom is at...
Okay. All right. Are you guys ready to move on? I appreciate you guys so much for coming in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So that's one of the latest ads. Looks like California GOP is taking shots there. All right. Jermaine G. Just one comment. He says, "Did you make the soundtrack?" I know you said it. I am a musician. I have not made one soundtrack. Not one soundtrack. Every now and then I'll play something that I'm performing, something from one of my live performances. But no, I haven't done any soundtracks. But yeah. Okay, so I just want to say thank you so much, Jermaine G, for coming in, for sharing your perspective with us. We really appreciate it. And yes, I haven't spoken with Derek C. Williams in a little bit, but I think he's doing well. Nick Smith, thank you so much for coming in. I want to say salute to you. And Anarchy Television, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Lynn Pila, thank you so much for coming in. John H. Roberts, thank you for joining us over on Twitch. I appreciate it. And Old School Wolf Media, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Joseph Francis Burton, thank you so much for coming in and supporting the channel. And yeah, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your perspective. And I always send you to those liberals. Send you to the liberals. The game ain't fair. Thank you so much for coming. You kind of snuck in there. Really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting. He says, haven't looked into it yet. Multitasking, listening. Thank you so much. Nick Smith, thank you so much. And let's see, Mad Militant was here. I'm not sure if he's still here. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. And you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday. And we'll see what happens in this big week. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you guys, as always, in the next live stream, in the comment section, on the video, Moonlight stream, a Real Under, or, Moonlight stream, or have you seen this? All right, guys.